Viridian, the Green Guide, written by Clouds, read by Distracted by Books, Chapter 78, Promises. Flowers? Really? Shota deadpanned. You do know they're just gonna die in a few days, right? You're such a spoil-sport, Sho. Hizashi groaned. They're meant to make things more cheerful while you're in the hospital. Add some color. My sleeping bag already does that. Shota countered. Yeah, but these are prettier. Nemori laughed. Come on, Shota. It's not as if you let yourself stay in the hospital that often. We need to take advantage of every second while we can. Shota glared at her, but knew she was right. Even when he was injured on patrol, he was much more likely to go to a recovery girl or deal with it on his own than go to the doctor. The only reason he was actually following the doctor's orders now was because his body was beyond exhausted from fighting the poison, and he didn't have enough stamina to stand for more than a few minutes at a time, much less jump out the window or let recovery girl work her magic. At least the doctors assured him he'd be back to normal by the end of the week. But for now, he was stuck here. Plus, maybe he was trying to set a good example for Viridian just in case the kid was paying attention. But nobody would be able to prove that. Shota turned to Tensei. Any word on Viridian? Tensei shook his head. I had my team comb every alley and rooftop near that beach, but no dice. Either he didn't get stung or... The awkward truth hung heavily in the silence between them, and Shota hated it. The logical part of his brain told him that if Viridian had gotten stung, he would have been in too much pain to get very far. But the illogical part of his brain reminded him to never underestimate the problem child's self-destructive tendencies. It would be just like him to refuse to go to the hospital despite being poisoned, simply because he wanted to save the antidote for someone who deserved it more. It was the first time since they'd met that the kid wasn't suicidal, and now Viridian had probably been murdered. It would have been darkly funny if it wasn't so tragic. What about your other problem child? Nemori asked finally. I've been hearing more and more about this Kachan lately. He's making quite a name for himself. Shota rolled his eyes, but accepted the change in subject gratefully. He's Amplifier's problem child, not mine. He's in your homeroom, Hizashi pointed out. That kind of makes him yours. Classes haven't started yet, Shota argued. He's not my problem. And yet, Nemori teased, so, how's the kid? Shota held out for a few stubborn seconds before sighing. He's fine. I haven't talked to him yet, but the doctors say he's not going to have any long-term effects from the poison, which is good. PTSD is another question, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. The berserker that was involved in the attack used to be the kid's friend before he went missing. Oh, Nemori's face fell. I'm sorry, I didn't know. Shota shrugged. It is what it is, unfortunately. At least we'll have someone he trusts there to ask questions when the guy wakes up. Maybe we'll actually get a lead this time, assuming we can keep the media from reporting that he survived and protect him from any other attempts on his life. That sucks, Tensei said. Yeah, Shota dragged a hand down his face and groaned. Yeah, it does. Katsuki chewed thoughtfully on one of the cookies that Auntie Inko had brought. She'd said that Izuku had helped her bake them, which was nice. Katsuki felt a little bit guilty, but he was actually sort of grateful that Izuku hadn't come with her to visit him. What would he even say to him? It wasn't like he could just greet him with a, hey, sorry for bullying you for 10 years and telling you to kill yourself. How's life? Even if their parents weren't in the room, that would just be way too awkward. He'd have to face him eventually. Katsuki knew that. But he just didn't know what to say. How is he supposed to even start a conversation, much less actually apologize for everything he'd done wrong? He felt like he was a better person now, but would Izuku even be able to see that? If Ogura was awake, He'd be willing to vouch for him, but he wasn't. Katsuki kept meaning to go visit him, but just like talking to Izuku, the thought was intimidating. He'd failed him. He hadn't even been able to look for him because he hadn't been in the hero course yet. Maybe he shouldn't have listened to the heroes and just gone full vigilante, but he hadn't, and Ogawa had paid the price for that. Well, now he was in the hero course. He wasn't going to be holding back anymore. There was a knock at the door, probably the doctor or one of the nurses coming to poke and prod him again, which Katsuki didn't want to deal with. He didn't really have a choice, though, so the sooner he let them in, the sooner it would be over. Come the hell in! Watch your language, brat! His old hag yelled. Come on in! Now that there wasn't the threat of his imminent death, his old hag actually trusted herself to be around the hospital without making a scene, or at least not one big enough to get her banned from visiting. His old man always came with, though, just to make sure nothing blew up. Katsuki was sure they'd already given his doctors a few gray hairs, and he'd only been there a day. The door opened slowly, and Tsukashi walked in, pushing Aizawa in a wheelchair. Despite everything, Katsuki couldn't help grinning at the sight. Nice wheels, old man. Aizawa glared at him. It's not too late to expel you. His dad looked between them in confusion. I'm sorry, sir, but do you know Katsuki? The hobo's Aizawa. Katsuki explained. He's going to be my homeroom teacher at UA. Eraserhead here was one of the pro heroes that protected your son during the attack. Tsukashi added, I'm Tsukashi, the lead detective on this case. Thanks for saving the brat's life. His old hag butted in. I know he's a pain in the ass, but we're glad you're willing to put up with him anyway. And here I was thinking he picked up his language at school. Aizawa grumbled to himself, making Katsuki muffle a snort. It's my job, ma'am. I'm not about to let one of my students die, not when I can do something about it. Still, we're very grateful, his dad said. This is the second time we've almost lost Katsuki in the last year, so having him here and safe is nothing short of a miracle for us. Hey, I'm still here, Katsuki yelled loudly. Stop talking about me like I'm just some weakling who just needs to be saved. I'm going to be a hero, or did you morons just forget that? Katsuki, his dad scolded. You can't talk that way to heroes. Actually, I'm pretty sure your son talks that way to everyone. Aizawa smirked. In fact, I'm pretty sure he'd swear at All Might if given the opportunity. All right, now listen here, you hobo. Katsuki started, but Tsukashi interrupted him. We actually have a few questions for your son, if that's all right, he said calmly. This is a difficult case, so we believe Kachan might be able to shed some light on it, due to some of the allies he's made in the underground, as well as his connection to the victim. His parents looked at each other hesitantly, but eventually the old hag nodded. You all right with that, Katsuki? Anything to help find these bastards. Katsuki answered quickly. What do you want to know? First of all, did Ogawa try to attack you in any way? Tsukashi asked. No. Katsuki shook his head. He was chasing me, but he wasn't trying to hurt me. I'm pretty sure he just wanted my help. Tsukashi noted something down in his notebook. Do you know why? It would make more sense to seek out a hero if he wanted protection. Katsuki frowned. He wasn't asking for protection, though. It was weird, but I don't think he was alone wherever those bastards were keeping him. He kept saying stuff about how the heroes wouldn't understand, but that I needed to help save him, whatever that meant. It sounded like he was talking about somebody else, not himself. I came to the same conclusion. Eraserhead said, it's likely he found you more trustworthy because of your friendship, or maybe because he thought your connections in the underground would help save the person he was talking about. It's hard to tell based only on what he said during the fight. Frustrating is what it is. Katsuki growled. I promised myself that I'd save him, and then I didn't. And now he wants me to save someone else, and I can't even do that because I don't know what I'm looking for, and he can't tell me because he's in a coma. It freaking sucks. His old man reached out to him sympathetically. Katsuki, Katsuki smacked his hand away. Save it. I'm just going to have to work extra hard at UA so I can keep my promise. Got it? Tsukashi nodded in understanding. We're looking forward to it. Just reach out if you encounter any information that might be relevant to the case. Other than that, I believe that's all the questions we have at the moment. Anything else relating to the investigation can wait until you've recovered. Katsuki huffed and settled back into his pillows. Whatever. There was an awkward silence, and Katsuki knew that Eraser was staring at him, but he refused to acknowledge it. Finally, Aizawa sighed. Have you gone to see him yet? Katsuki didn't look up. No. What's the point anyway? It's not like he'll even know I'm there. Actually, there is some evidence that coma patients are at least passingly aware of what's happening outside. Tsukashi explained, consistent exposure to familiar voices, especially, can make a big difference in someone's recovery. Katsuki hesitated for another moment before giving in. Frickin' fine, but you're coming too, you dumb hobo. Aizawa just grinned. Walking into Ogawa's hospital room was weird, not the least of which because he wasn't actually walking. The stupid poison had drained too much out of him, and he'd only stubbornly made it a quarter of the way down the hall when his legs gave out from under him, and he had to have a nurse haul him into a wheelchair. Thankfully, he'd at least convinced his parents to stay behind, so the only person to witness his failure was Aizawa. But that was bad enough. The nurses that had pushed him there gave polite nods as they left the two alone with the patient, and Katsuki hesitantly scooched a little closer to the bed. Katsuki knew he looked rough, but Ogawa was even worse, if possible. The bright red welts of the bee sting stood out starkly against his skin, which was so pale that it almost looked gray under the hospital lights. His tentacles had shrunk a bit, but were still significantly longer than Katsuki remembered them being last month. And they had gotten so much darker that if Katsuki hadn't seen them before his transformation, he would have just assumed they were black. The circles under his eyes were bigger than Aizawa's, and even asleep, he looked exhausted. What did they do to him? Katsuki whispered. We'll find out. Aizawa's voice was full of determination. The good news is that he's not showing the same signs of mental degradation that the other berserkers were, even if we're not sure why. If he can recover from the poison, he should survive. The doctors here are already looking into what makes him different than a normal person, and we're going to figure this out and make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. All right? Katsuki didn't respond. He just kept looking at his friend, a mix of anger, desperation, and confidence welling up inside him. I couldn't save him. I'm not going to fail again, though. I'll be damned if I ever let that happen again. I promised him I'd save someone, and I'm going to do it. That's not enough, though. I'm going to catch these damn villains so that when this idiot finally wakes up, he doesn't have to be scared anymore. Sound like a plan, hobo? Aizawa nodded. I think you're starting to get what it means to be a hero. End of chapter.